I'm Gary Tabakman. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Houston. I'm going to do a little Q&A with my staff right now in order for you to get to know me a little bit better. I know that hiring a lawyer can be very daunting, and I want you to get some comfort level in getting to know who I am. So click on the link below if you want some more information, and I'm happy to offer any and all advice that I believe could be beneficial to you. So here we go.
Yeah, so Gary, I have 5 just personal and background questions here for you. So the first one is, what made you want to become a defense attorney in the first place?
So my background is a little bit more complicated than I guess a lot of others. My family immigrated here in the early 90s from the former USSR, from Russia. I often tell people, I even often tell jurors this, that we did not have the ability to participate in the legal justice system the way that we do here. Part of the beauty behind what I get to do is I get to stand up and represent individuals and have a voice that can speak on their behalf. It's something that we didn't have in my former country. My parents oftentimes talked about this. And when I realized that this is something that's an opportunity that's available, it really resonated with me. And I wanted to make sure that I can give back in a way to others, but also make it a career where obviously I can make a little bit of money doing it. So here I am.
Nice. And Gary, would you say there was a defining case or moment early in your career that shaped how you practice law today?
Yeah, I think that there were multiple cases that existed like that. I think that whenever you end up handling some cases that are very complex, or they may have long-ranging ramifications of somebody that may end up in prison for a very long time, it could definitely shake you, and it could form your judgment, and it could form the way that you ultimately handle certain types of cases and the way that you communicate with clients. I mean, no case is created equal, but I could tell you that the one thing that I did learn from just thinking about maybe a few of the complicated cases that I had when I first started out practicing, is that this isn't something that you're going to be ready for until you're actually there. And once you're there and you get a feel for it, then you start to really understand what you're capable of doing and the way that you're capable of impacting the situation. And so I mean, I would love to go into the details and facts of it. So if any of you are interested, give me a call and I will break it all down for you.
Sounds good. So it kind of sounds like becoming a parent, right? You're not really ready until it happens.
I mean, it's exactly kind of like becoming a parent. Every single case is a separate little baby of yours. You know, some babies are more difficult than others, and you just kind of take it day by day, and you ultimately end up growing together, and hopefully you'll raise exactly the child that you want, which is technically in a case formation, you'll get exactly the result that you want.
Gary, what's the biggest misconception people have about defense attorneys?
I think the biggest misconception is that we are not doing something that is usually kind of like legally viable, that there's always some kind of result-seeking behavior that's ultimately trying to get a case dismissed or get a result based on a technicality. I think that's a huge misconception. I think that people genuinely don't understand the amount of actual thought process that goes into what we do and what it takes for us to be able to do this job. The amount of not only legal research that goes into it, but actual physical work that requires us to investigate the backgrounds of the case, to develop the appropriate best relationships with individuals in order to be able to gain trust. That is something that people don't really understand that's part of this job. So yeah, most cases don't just go away based on technicalities. Most cases that either result in not guilty verdicts or that get dismissed, they're dismissed in not guilty verdicts because of the good work that's been put into them.
Got it. Who have been your biggest influences or mentors in your legal career?
Gosh, I mean, there's been so many. I've been so privileged to work with so many great lawyers in the city, in the state, and actually all over the country. When I first started out, right out of law school, I was never a prosecutor. I became a defense lawyer right away, and I was working for Kent Schaefer for a long time. I was working for and with Nicole DeBoard for a long time, and with David Byers. In having the opportunity to work with these lawyers, I've also been introduced to many other lawyers, and I've worked with many other lawyers through them. I've seen some of the best work that you could possibly see in criminal defense through them, whether it be preparing for trial, cross-examination, meeting with clients, communicating with other lawyers, learning how to be able to engage individuals through networking means in order to be able to get other types of cases. So I've been very, very fortunate from that perspective. It's helped me shape who I am today. And I look forward to giving back in the same way to other individuals that hopefully will grow with me.
Gary, how do you handle the emotional weight of defending clients facing life-changing charges?
I mean, there isn't a right or wrong way to do this. I think everybody does it individual, obviously, which is the point of your question. I find it best to develop a system of good work-life balance relationship for your own existence. Obviously, everybody will find a way to do this differently. I think that the biggest problem within the legal community in general is substance abuse. Early on in my career, I learned that this is not an advantageous way to deal with your stressors. So I try to stay healthy. I eat clean. I work out. I try to have good relationships with people that I care about. Also, the most important part about this work, because it's so mentally draining and heavy oftentimes, because you hear so many challenging things, no different than a psychiatrist. Even a psychiatrist has to go see their own psychiatrist once in a while, or a psychologist has to see a psychologist because of the amount of stuff that they carry. I think my biggest and best way of handling this is to developing relationships with people that I care about in order to openly communicate about some of the challenging things that I might be going through, or challenging cases, without naming names or going into specific details and facts, but just to kind of break things down with either colleagues or friends of mine. That is probably the best stress reliever in this type of job.
Yeah, so now I have 5 questions for you that kind of revolve around, your expertise and philosophy. So the first of those 5 questions is, when someone is under federal investigation, what's the first mistake they often make?
Somebody under federal investigation, definitely, and depending on the type of case, obviously we can split it up into white-collar cases or the more violent, or not necessarily violent cases, but drug cases, or, depending on, there's even different types of fraud cases. I would say the number one mistake and the number one misconception that people typically have is that once they know that they're under investigation, they either start moving money around, they start obstructing justice by communicating with witnesses in a way to ultimately get them to stop communicating with the government, start changing phone numbers, opening bank accounts, moving stuff around, communicating with family members in a way in order to be able to hide something. So your behaviors start to change, not change, but your behaviors actually amplify from what the government is already looking at you to begin with. It's a very unintelligent way of handling things, because at the end of the day, at that point in time, you're working with your emotions as opposed to working intelligently, which is why as soon as you find out you're under investigation, the number one thing you can do is keep your mouth shut, go meet with a lawyer, talk to them about what's going on, and get the best advice that you could possibly get. Don't think that you're going to be able to get out of this on your own.
Got it. And Gary, how is defending someone in federal court different than state court?
There's so many things that go into this, but in short, the biggest difference is there's a ton of decorum within a federal courtroom setting. I mean, as soon as you enter a federal court, there isn't docket settings with, hundreds of people on the docket. If you're asked to come to court, you're usually one of 2 people there, or one of 3 people, or one of 3 cases there. Everything is formalized. If I want to have something heard, I have to file it and appear before the judge in order to be heard. I can't just walk into a courtroom and ask to approach. It's also incredibly intimidating, because at the end of the day, federal court is the big leagues of criminal defense. Usually it carries a punishment range of prison. It's very rare that you leave federal court with a probation or a dismissal. So you automatically know that the stakes are higher, the weight is heavier, and it's much more intimidating. So, as soon as you get into a place where you're, if you enter a federal courtroom anytime with a defense lawyer, the very first time that you're sitting there, you hear the door start banging, like boom, 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 and then a clerk comes out that calls the federal judge into the courtroom and starts telling you, hear ye, presiding now for the Southern District of Texas or whatnot. You're all of a sudden like, oh, what's about to happen now, right? We don't have that in state court necessarily, so there isn't just an all rise. So there's a level of decorum, and it's a formidable place for a battle. So you feel it right away.
Gary, what do clients usually misunderstand about their own cases when they first come to you?
So I think the biggest misunderstanding is that it could be, I would say it's one of 2 things. One is either clients are putting too much pressure on themselves to begin with based on the type of case that it may be. It oftentimes depends on your background. Some people are brought up in family structures where it's like, if you did something wrong, you're automatically putting so much pressure on yourself and you're automatically going into a very dark space because you've been taught to never, break rules but at the end of the day, people find themselves in places oftentimes where they never expected to find themselves in life. Like this is, people make mistakes and people get charged with crimes. This happens in life. I think the biggest misconception that typically is made, or biggest mistake that clients make, is they put an overwhelming amount of pressure on themselves to such a degree to where they actually hinder the ability for the lawyer to help them through the process. And it's important not to do that, because you want to be able to develop a trusting relationship where the lawyer can help guide you out of the situation, as opposed to you creating more obstacles for them.
That was good. Gary, what's a common myth about the legal process that TV or movies get completely wrong?
I mean, it's probably dozens of things over and over again that we would see throughout film and video, whether you watch, NCIS or Law and Order or any other legal shows or movies, for that matter of fact. Some of them get it better than others. I've definitely seen a few where I'm kind of like, somebody did their research correctly here. I definitely see the one thing that people always get wrong is the difference between state and federal court. You always see some sort of setting where it's like, clearly a case that's, the type of case that is being evaluated within a courtroom is like, well, that can't be a state case or that can't be a federal case. Like that makes zero sense, right? I think a lot of the stuff, especially it's really sexy, is like the forensic stuff and stuff that is forensically intriguing to people that makes a case or a show much more exciting, is usually much more over embellished than it really is in real life. But I think it has to happen that way in a film or TV setting, because you got to synthesize it into a much smaller portion of, something that may have been going on for well over a year or two, right? So I think the biggest thing that you see is that's inaccurate is just the speed at which everything is going at, and kind of like making it seem like it's just such a glitzy or overly glorified, beautiful process, when it's not necessarily like that at all.
Yeah, and along those lines, Gary, how often are you standing, just like the movies, right? So how often are you standing in a courtroom saying, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," and doing kind of that actor show that we see so often?
Look, I mean, I think some lawyers are trying more cases than others. If you're handling a lot of DWI cases, if you're handling a lot of cases that are more frequently to go to trial, you're doing that a lot more often. My office doesn't handle as many of those as much as we do take those cases. I'd much rather refer them to a reputable DWI lawyer than handle one myself with somebody that has knowledge in that space, for example. I wish I could take more cases to trial. The challenge is getting those cases to trial, because oftentimes, thankfully, our office is getting results that clients are seeking outside of getting to a trial, which is either through a dismissal or a result that ultimately, one that's salvageable for their future. And trials can be risky, obviously. But if we go to trial, we go to trial, and we're definitely making all of the things that you may hear with respect to ladies and gentlemen of a jury, and you're coming up with creative ideas, and you're getting to work in order to be able to effectively advocate on somebody's behalf. I mean, that's definitely part of the glitzy part of this job.
And you talked about, you don't necessarily specialize in DWI cases. So what do you specialize in?
So right now, my practice is broken down, I would say, kind of a 30-30-40 type approach. My 30% of it is state practice, 30 is federal, and the rest being post-conviction work. So a lot of the cases that I would handle in state court, I mean, they vary, but they're primarily felony-related offenses, all types of felony-related offenses. In federal court, it's similarly a mix, but right now I would say it's primarily fraud cases, white-collar fraud cases in federal court. Post-conviction-wise, it's primarily writs and writs of habeas corpus. So writs of habeas corpus is past the appellate process, where you're trying to pretty much, it's kind of your like last bite of the apple in order to be able to get your case back into a courtroom. So that's what my practice primarily consists of.
Without naming names, can you tell me about a case where everyone thought the client was done for, but you found a way to turn it around?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's definitely been a few of those. I've had a case where we've had multiple white-collar cases with circumstances of where there's an international element. So usually when there's an international element, it means that there is a large financial scheme of some sort that was going on between multiple different countries, whether it be Venezuela or China. There usually is some type of violation that's occurring. So typically in those types of circumstances, there is almost a definitive kind of or assumed guilty of those types of individuals. And once you do enough investigation into the background of circumstances, or usually fraud cases revolve around tracing the money. Once you trace the money and you start to kind of figure out the landscape much better, or things that the government may not have seen, all of a sudden you find yourself in a space to where they're letting go of a particular case where people have thought that there's no way, right? So that has definitely happened on multiple occasions. On the state side, of course, I've had murder cases that were pending and have gotten dismissed because, the initial investigation led somebody to believe that this was the individual that was responsible for killing someone. And after some time, it became evident that that's not accurate. In those cases, those are rare instances, obviously, and you want to keep cards closer to your chest. You don't want to reveal something that may potentially be a trial strategy. So you always kind of strategize whether or not you want to actually disseminate certain information that you find out throughout the course of your investigation. But that certainly has happened. And obviously a big relief to everybody that's involved.
What's the most high pressure situation you faced in court, and how did you handle it?
Not very well.
I don't love that question, by the way.
No, that's a great question. High pressure situation. Look, every situation is a high pressure situation in a court setting, right? Everything can have drastic ramifications. I'd say that the way I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a high pressure situation. The way that I would describe it as on a case by case basis, some cases will carry more weight than others. One of the cases in particular that I can recall that had a significant amount of weight just for me personally and professionally, because I was representing somebody very young and I was advocating very heavily for this individual, and I felt that what was happening was a travesty. Like I just nothing aligned with respect to the way that I saw the case versus the way that the government saw the case. And it was a very pressured situation from his family, from him, and then I put that same pressure onto myself because I wanted to make sure that we can get the result that I believe was appropriate. That was taxing, and it caused, for me personally, it was very, very tiresome, and it caused a lot of stress and a lot of sleepless nights, I would say. Thankfully, that's not most of my circumstances, and I have a very good way of balancing it. But there's one particular case, again, call me, I might be able to share more, that caused me to have a lot of trepidation for sure.
If someone finds out they're under investigation, what's the very first thing they should do?
Don't talk to the police. Never answer any questions at all. You're not obligated to. It's your constitutional right to do so. There's a reason why we have the Constitution. You never want to find yourself on the wrong side of trying to convince somebody that you didn't do something when they may have already had enough information to know that you did. Usually, I have found that the government always knows more than you do. And so you're always at a disadvantage if you choose to cooperate with the government. Never cooperate with anyone until you've spoken with a lawyer. But that's the number one advice that I could give anybody.
Gary, what's the worst thing someone can do when they get arrested?
Well, again, speaking with law enforcement is the worst. Outside of that, trusting people that you shouldn't be trusting. If it's a circumstance of where there might be a co-defendant case, you start to communicate with co-defendants on your case in order to try to change some sort of narrative or scenario, or concoct some sort of scenario that only ends up creating more problems and pitfalls for you. Do not try to flee the jurisdiction. Do not move money around. Do not try getting your family members involved in something that they shouldn't be involved in, right? So, you need to take a step back and consult with a lawyer right away in order for that lawyer to give you the best possible advice.
Gary, how should someone choose the right defense attorney for their case?
So, I have an entire video that I just did on this, so you can click on the link below, check it out. You could get my 10-minute scope on what you should consider as far as hiring a lawyer or how to communicate with a lawyer about getting into an attorney-client relationship. I would say that in short form, the most important thing is if you feel comfortable in communicating with the person that you're meeting, it's very much a feel thing, right? You will know. You'll know if this is the person that you can trust, and you will know that this is the person that can help you get out of the space that you find yourself in. Do not just hire the first lawyer that you talk to, and do not even hire the first lawyer that somebody may have referred you to. You are free to roam around, and I always tell this to potential clients that come into my office, especially if they come in to see me first. I say, you don't need to make this decision right now. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. Go talk to 4 or 5 lawyers, get a feel for what they have to say, and you'll know.
And along those lines, Gary, what What should I do if I find a lawyer that I really want to work with, but I can't afford that particular lawyer? What options do I have? Is there any sort of...
The lawyer that you cannot afford will always refer you to a lawyer that they trust, that they know can do a good job for them, that would be more affordable.
What's the most rewarding part of being a defense attorney?
There's so many. There really are. I mean, I think it's one of the most rewarding careers that you can have. At the end of the day, obviously, if you have been able to navigate a case for someone that had high stakes and you were able to get a result for them that salvaged their life or saved their life or even a portion of their life, it's incredibly gratifying, because I think, going back to your question about the misconceptions, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that, we represent the worst of the worst in society, which that's inherently not true. We represent people that have found themselves in situations that have just happened to have fallen upon them, where they may have made one bad decision, or they have made several strings of bad decisions that have put them into a perplexing place, and they're trying to change course in the direction of their life. I heavily believe that people are redeemable, regardless of what may have occurred in their life. I think that what a lot of people don't understand is that, people from all walks of life come from different backgrounds. And it's rewarding to be able to meet people and represent people that have gone through immense challenges, usually psychologically, and help them achieve a goal of not necessarily just finding a result in the case that they want, but truly making an impact on them, especially with someone that's younger, and help them shift their goals in a different direction and help shape a narrative for their future that's much more bright.
And Gary, last question. If you weren't practicing law, what do you think you'd be doing instead?
I'd be an architect. I was an architecture major. I've always wanted to be an architect. That's just one of the things that I've always gravitated toward is designing things, building things. It's one of the things that I think that kind of shaped who I am. But it also helps me with my legal career, because I look at everything as kind of building blocks, right? And so you can always tailor and change things in a direction of where you kind of want it to go, which is part of sort of like this design element that you kind of see through things. And from what I learned to do, it also helped me learn patience, because when your mind works in a way to where you're designing something, it develops a lot of patience as well. So, but yeah, I'd love to be an architect. I still want to be an architect. Maybe if I make enough money doing this, I might jump ship and shift.
And Gary, how can viewers contact you if they want to schedule a free consultation?
Sure. Yeah. Click on the link below. There's a free consultation page on there. You can call me at 713-429-1624. It's my office line. Call anytime. It's answering 24/7. And leave a message, and I'm happy to get back in touch with you and give you as much information as I can in order to help you with any challenges that you may be facing. I hope you guys enjoyed getting to know me a little bit better. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.